Just wanted to say welcome to everybody who's here. My name is Josh, and so I work part-time with an organization that you may or may not be familiar with. It's called Brave Future. And Brave Future is essentially a collective of microchurch, house church, simple church oriented organizations, just really different networks that are unified around the idea of minimal ecclesiology. And we're all over the country. We've got some folks in Australia and some folks in Europe as well. And really, the idea is just to bring together like-minded groups to build each other up. It's a big tent, but to build each other up, to understand each other, to be challenged by each other's ideas, and really just to forge a new way forward for the church in the West. And so, anyway, that's the idea of what we're doing here. And Brave Future owns the Microchurch Conference. The Tampa Underground folks and the Kansas City Underground folks kind of helped it get off the ground, but now Brave Future is the collective that owns the Microchurch Conference. And so, yeah, and so these sessions are essentially preparation for the Microchurch Conference and just trying to offer a glimpse into the kind of content that the Microchurch Conference will feature. So, anyway, that's what we're doing. Obviously, we're excited for the Microchurch Conference happening March 12th through the 14th in Tampa. We get to actually have it here in Florida, which is great. But yeah, for now, we've got this time together to talk about related things and be built up in our individual ministries. So let me say a quick prayer for us, then I'll introduce to you guys Matt Ulrich. God, we thank you for everyone on this call. We know that people are just zooming in, accessing from so many different places, and there's a good chance that we're also coming from different models. We have slightly different concerns in some cases, different challenges that we're facing. But God, you know our contexts. You can adapt these things, Lord. You can show us through your Spirit how they apply, and so we give ourselves up to that, God. We pray for clarity as we listen to Matt. We pray for an open mind, God. Just show us how these insights gleaned in a different context apply to the place that you have put us in. And thank you for the Spirit that we have in common that brings us all together in the most fundamental and possible way. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so Matt Ulrich is a pastor with the Greenhouse Church Network. He's up in Gainesville, Florida. He is a master equipper. He's a great mind, a good friend, a very seasoned network leader, and I think importantly, Greenhouse represents one of the Brave Future partners that has the balance between what we might call the micro and the macro expressions of the church. They both do large gatherings, they own buildings, but yet they have an emphasis on deploying, equipping, and empowering people into really distributed communities, which they call microchurches. And so Matt has something special, I think, for us because of that on the subject of what it means to keep leaders interconnected even as your movement grows. And so, anyway, that's Matt. Matt, feel free to say anything else you want about yourself, but hopefully I did okay.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. You did much better than I would have said about myself. So, but yeah, hey guys, my name's Matt. I'm one of the executive pastors at Greenhouse Church. I've been overseeing microchurches and discipleship with the Greenhouse Church and our movement since I came on staff 18 years ago. I started with absolutely zero experience pastorally or microchurch leadership. I wasn't raised in church, so I didn't have a denominational background, kind of coloring my lens. I just looked at the Bible and I tried to emulate what I saw there. I was just brought a blank canvas into my first pastoral gig at Greenhouse Church in 2006. On my first day on the job, I was 26, and I told the person who hired me, like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing. She said, yeah, you'll figure it out. And so, honestly, for the past 18 years, that's been my laser beam focus. Try to figure out how to help believers become disciples, who become disciple makers, who then lead microchurches that reproduce more soul winning and disciple making churches. So, just a little bit of context for you guys from kind of where we are and where we're coming from. I jumped in, like I said, in 2006 when we were a church of about 400 people. At the time, we had 12 small groups, and Pastor Mike, who's now our lead pastor, he took over about 6 months before I got there, and he very quickly shifted a very traditional Assemblies of God church and just radically upended the cultural and the ecclesial ethos to move to a very strong microchurch based model based off of Acts 2, where they met in the temple and they met in each other's homes. And so we've pursued like Josh said, a macro, micro hybrid model since then for the past 18 years. Currently, we have about 207 microchurches in our movement. We've got 4 macro churches in Gainesville, Tampa, Jacksonville, South Florida. We have a church plant in Orlando. We also have microchurches that are unconnected in the state of Florida from macro churches. They're just hubs of microchurches around the state. Like Josh said, I'm in our Gainesville campus, so we have about 169 microchurches there currently. And so I'm not trying to be the awkward guy who number drops for his ego, but I do think it's helpful for the sake of our conversation, knowing and sharing with you guys where we're coming from and where we're at. So that'll kind of help even give some light to the structures that we've put in place based on our size throughout the years. But over the years, I mean, we've experimented with a ton of different ways to coach and connect with our microchurch leaders. Some worked great, some failed epically. Others worked great, but they couldn't scale. So we've had to go through a few iterations over the years to ensure that our leaders are staying connected in meaningful and helpful ways. And interestingly enough, I mean, when Josh and Lucas asked me to do this a couple months ago, we were literally in the beginning stages of a radically new approach to coaching and keeping our leaders connected. So we've literally just rolled this out last month. So jury's still out on whether it's successful or not. On paper, it looks awesome. So I'll let you know in a few months if it actually worked. But we'll get to that eventually. I want to start though, just even with the why. Like why does connection matter? Why even have this webinar about staying connected to our leaders? So real quick, just quick poll. How many of you would consider yourselves extroverts? How many extroverts are on the call? All right, who are the introverts? Is it just me, Craig, and David? All right, my people. There you go. I'm definitely more introverted. My wife's just a wild extrovert. You know, if she's with people, you see energy building. I don't want a ton of people, but I do want I think I raised my own hand. I do want my 1 or 2 people that I personally want to be with me, right? Why do you think that is? Why do you think we have a bent towards community? Even the deepest of introverts, we want community. Why do you think that is for us? What in us?
People desire to be seen and known and heard. Like it's in us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Brandon, what you said, like it's just in us, right? I mean, we're made in the image of a Trinitarian God. Like he's in relationship with himself. He's in community with himself. So even the deepest of introverts, we desire, we are programmed, spiritually wired to want to be with people. And when we're isolated, we just don't do well, right? We don't have the encouragement of community around us. We fall more susceptible to the wrong voices. I mean, there is just an element of that reality. And so I'm just going to have a few slides here, but even just like some biblical examples of this, like David and Jonathan is kind of a huge one. You know, you see in 1 Samuel 20:42, Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever." And you just see this in the arc of David's life. When Jonathan's in his life, he's prospering. His ministry, his dynasty is going well. When David loses Jonathan, I mean, his life just kind of starts nosediving. I mean, he sleeps with Bathsheba, kills Uzziah. Like you're right, and he just the census, his family falls apart. You see that just physically happen in his life. How about competitive? Anybody competitive on the call? Any competitors? Anybody like to compete? All right, what are those places of competition in your life? Where do you like to be competitive with other people?
Boards.
Sports? Anything else?
Game night.
Game night. I'll tell you what, man. People get ruthless with game nights. It seems so innocent until you've got a competitive person there. What happens when you play it, like sports wise? What happens when you play with somebody that's better than you?
Hopefully play up to them.
Right. You play up to their standard. You get better, right? You usually plateau around the same skill set of the person you're playing with. It's also kind of wild. It's true about finances. Apparently, stats show that your income in 10 years will reflect the average income of your 5 closest friends right now. So it's pretty kind of wild, right? So it's like I need richer friends. That's what I need right now.
Right?
Right. I know. But if that's true about finance, that's true about sports, how much more true is that about our spirituality and our leadership, right? If you're placing yourself around strong followers of Jesus, you're going to begin to lean into that lifestyle. If you're around sharp leaders, you're going to be sharper yourself. And it's not even just like what we can get out of it. Like there is something about being connected, right? 2 Samuel 10:9 through 12. This is, Joab and Abishai. It's when they're fighting against the two warring sides. says, if the Armenians are too strong for me, then you come to my rescue. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I'll come to your rescue. Be strong. Let us fight bravely for our God and for our people and the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in our sight. And this is one of those verses that's just visionary regarding connection. Joab and Abishai, they're fighting. They have each other's backs in the battle of their lives. And the sad reality is that most microchurch leaders are lacking this type of camaraderie when they're leading. They just won't thrive without it. I mean, how many of you know, or you've been in a spot, or microchurch leaders that are in a spot where they needed a Joab washing their back, or they needed that Abishai to lean on when things get rough. We need brothers and sisters in arms that say, if it gets too rough, I'm going to come and rescue you. Spiritually, we need this, but even pragmatically, proper connections within your network matter for a lot of reasons. And I'm just going to rip through a couple of these real quick. And it's in the box right here on the left. But when you have healthy leaders, you have healthy microchurches, right? I mean, it's just kind of pretty straightforward. If you care for our leaders, if they're in a good spot, their microchurch is a good spot. If they're strong and healthy, their microchurches are going to be strong and healthy. So when we care for them, it's just going to matriculate down to their people and their groups. There's sustained movement unity. I mean, keeping dozens of decentralized groups pulling in the same direction is challenging. We're not looking for uniformity, but we are looking for unity, right? We know we're trying to accomplish together. And that's a huge deal. Most of the microchurches that we thought would be good. They were really strong leaders that were not connected to a macro church across the state of Florida. They had a shelf life of about 12 to 14 months. And we just thought, hey, they're really strong. They're going to do really good. And they just died out because they didn't have that connection that they needed to really sustain. And so we'll talk about ways that we've kind of ameliorated that in a little bit here. But I mean, that's been huge for us, trying to be a movement that isn't all just in one centralized location. There's also just early intervention. You can find those potential issues like burnout and conflict, drift, bad theology. These are all caught before the crisis happens if you have a solid method of connection. I mean, we've launched hundreds of microchurches over the past 18 years. I've been at Greenhouse. I've only had to shut down 2 microchurches against a leader's consent. And neither of those were things that I didn't see coming, right? These were theological drifts where people just kind of were pushing the bounds of what I thought was orthodoxy. And ultimately, we had to say, hey, if you're going to move in this direction, we're going to have to break ties. But I saw it coming, right? I mean, the hyperbolic other side of this is like Saddleback Church. They had Mormons that were leading their small groups. They didn't even know because there wasn't a relational connection there that they had. A couple other things like momentum and multiplication. Leaders who feel supported, they're more likely to take risks, to move in sodalic spaces, to raise up others and multiply. We're a lot more bold when we know we have reinforcements behind us. Like when I was little, I'm still like, I can still put my fingers around my wrist. I mean, I'm a small guy. When I was little, I had a big mouth and I didn't realize that because I would go and just mouth off to bullies. And like, I had that justice streaking before I was saved. And I didn't realize until years later that my friend Alejandro, who was like bigger than everyone in my grade, was always just standing behind me, shaking his head at the bully. So I thought I was like this super strong, like whatever. And it wasn't. It was because someone was behind me actually giving me the reinforcements. I didn't even know I needed. I didn't even know I had. But just that reinforcement, I think, happens even like anecdotally in my life, but also with microchurches. Last 2 things, just cultural reinforcement. It's just intentional connections help embed your network and your movement's distinctives. Every leader drifts, and especially microchurch leaders have the potential to take what's already sometimes a very isolated environment and start to do their own thing that can be counter to your culture. So healthy connections reinforce what matters and those non-negotiables for your network and your team. And that's just the last thing, relational tethering. I mean, leaders are lonely. They're just lonely. Microchurch leaders especially are predisposed to loneliness without connection to a larger body. So connection prevents isolation. Leaders remember they're part of a bigger family and they're just not running solo. What about you guys? Are there any other key reasons that you would highlight from your experience that comes from relationally connecting?
I would say resource sharing. I mean, a lot of our leaders and stuff are just sharing the stuff that they find useful. And a lot of the practices that we develop are practices that started with one leader, microchurch, and then gradually spread through the network.
100%. Yeah. When somebody's doing something great, they're doing something right. Like it gives them an opportunity to share and kind of propagate that throughout the rest of the movement. It's great. Anything else?
One thing that we've experienced is watching the leaders start to coach each other which is so beautiful. And it brings up different gifts in them that they didn't even know they have. But now I'm watching that. I'm just sitting back. I'm like, this is great. And they're coaching each other because they've got everything it takes, right? The encouragement, the experience, all of that. So that's been fun to watch.
Yeah, it totally. I mean, you find some of your greatest leaders and coaches just because they're in those spaces, just because you give them the opportunity to do that. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it kind of just segueing into some of these other things, like what's the purpose for connection? Like we kind of talked about the why, but like what's kind of the pragmatic purposes? Kind of, we've seen it just broken down into kind of 4 different spaces. The things that like leaders need, the reason we connect is shepherding, inspiration, training, and equipping. This isn't like a exhaustive list, but these are the 4 things that we kind of look at when we're looking at connection with our leaders. First is just shepherding. This covers like spiritual covering, accountability, relational connections. Connect with the microchurch leaders. We allows you to shepherd them well. And like Brianna's saying, like it allows them to shepherd each other well, right? I mean, leaders need spiritual covering just like everyone else. Like I said, sometimes we think, oh, these are our strongest leaders. They'll be fine. And that's just not true. They often are pouring out so much that they need someone pouring into them. It also provides accountability, helping them stay on course in their own walk with Jesus, keeping their marriage and family healthy, staying faithful to the missions that they're on. We've had leaders that in our network, if you just looked at their microchurch, you would think that they are thriving. You'd think that they are just in the prime of their life because they're producing radical fruit. But there have been times where there's just major marital issues or sin struggles that have been flying under the radar that they've kept hidden, but only due to those relational connections do they kind of bring that out into the light. And we're able to help them and move them into a space of healing and wholeness. It also gives those relational connections with other leaders. Like leading, again, it's lonely when we're not alone, when we realize, hey, we're part of a bigger family. We can kind of meet immediate needs that are just not going to get met otherwise. Like there's this one time where there's a leader, he got like a knee surgery, and I was just checking in with his wife, and she called me at like 3 a.m. and she was like, hey Matt, I I don't know what to do. Her husband was much larger than she was, and she's like, something's wrong with his medication. He's trying to get up. He just had like this reconstructive knee surgery, and the doctor told me not to. So I drove over to his house at like 3 a.m. Apparently, the pharmacist gave him 2 medicines that don't interact well. So he was basically like kind of hallucinating and doing this stuff. So I sat in his living room for 3 hours while he kind of came off these medicines, keeping him in a chair. I mean, there's stuff like that where, man, I want our leaders to know, hey, when you've got something happening, like you've got somebody to call. Like we had enough relational equity that she felt confident enough to call me at 3 a.m. and say, I need you to help subdue my husband right now because he's like his medication is just like not going well. I mean, there are ways that are shepherding that aren't on the books that we need to be able to be available to. The other thing is just inspiration. Like Microchurch, we need our people having vision and alignment and encouragement. Every leader needs to be reminded the why of what they're doing. And these touch points are moments to refresh vision, to bring back the why. Hey, why do we do what we do? Like that's a great question we ask our people all the time. Hey guys, just give me a few stories. Why do we do what we do? And really just recalibrating them to the vision of what we feel like God's given us. Because a lot of times, I mean, you guys know this, like when you're leading a microchurch, you get bogged down in the minutia of the kind of things that are going on day to day. And you need somebody to kind of lift your eyes back to the vision. And so we can assure alignment for the vision. We can engage with them personally, help them feel seen, celebrated, remind them God's using them. It puts fuel in their tank and inspires them to continue to go. Kind of I think what David was saying, like training, like new tactics, how-tos of leadership, disciple making, apprentices and multiplications. This connection creates space to train leaders on new tactics, share what's working well in your context. Some of the best things that we've done as a movement came from best practices that were shared by other microchurch leaders to the other microchurch leaders. I mean, game-changing stuff for us in terms of multiplication and apprenticeship and things like that came from the ground up, not from the top down. So having that connection and those training points are huge. And again, just equipping new tools, biblical literacy, disciple making, mentorship, connecting has that opportunity to put tools in their hands, resources, frameworks, studies that make things easier, strengthen their biblical literacy, give them confidence to teach and disciple from scripture accurately, and we just get to mentor them as leaders, to walk alongside of them, to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry in ways that they wouldn't have figured them out wouldn't have figured it out on their own, you know? Again, like what of these kind of four, have you utilized any of these combinations, or maybe like a fifth or a sixth thing that you use that is kind of key for connecting with your leaders? Or even examples of one of these four things that you've seen done that has really been kind of a blessing to your networks or your movements?
We've tried to structure both. We've tried to provide both structured and unstructured spaces for leaders connecting. I think like in my previous context, we whenever we got leaders together, it was almost always because I used to pastor in more of like a macro micro setting, very similar to Matt's. And I think in that context, we whenever we got leaders together, it was always business in a sense. You know, it was always like we're doing this workshop, we're training on this, we're teaching on this. But I think in my current church network, which is really just micro, it's just a network of house churches, we try to do a lot more just like open space type stuff. Like we do this that we call them we call them lanai sessions. Because I used to have this like big back lanai where we would just basically get food and drinks, have some hanging out, then like a time of silent prayer, and then we would literally just ask the question, what is God show like what is God showing people? What are you learning in your house churches? And we would just have like open dialogue and see what kind of emerged and what came to the surface. And I agree with you, Matt. I feel like some of the best stuff that we've then that has then bubbled up and we've done movement wide has come from those sessions. So
Yeah.
it's just an example of what you're talking about.
You're
That's
so
great.
Florida. Lanai sessions.
Lanai session.
You're
Yeah.
so Florida. Yeah, I mean, I think I guess in a similar way, I think we've always known how critical it is for missionaries to be connected to missionaries, microchurch leaders to be connected to microchurch leaders, directors to be connected to network directors. Like you have to have like real connected peers at every fractal of the church and church leadership. And when I think in the past, a thing that we've had to navigate is like if we try to create environments for microchurch leaders to connect with each other, and you make that the explicit purpose, they don't come. So you sort of have to create environments. You have to, for us, we've sort of had to navigate like creating environments that are for microchurch leaders to be in the same room for other reasons that get them in the room. But secretly, all we're wanting to do is have them talk with each other. But if you say, come talk with each other, they're like, I can't prioritize that, you know. But so if we have to do like coaching bar, you know, like what Bree was talking about earlier, like you create like mutual coaching, or you create like think tanks, like we do like wicked problem think tanks, or we do microchurch showcases, or we do like awards banquets where you're sort of you create like a version of like the Dundies, you know, from like The Office. You know, like you're like awarding microchurch leaders for like innovation and risk, and everybody will get in the room for that stuff. And then they find peers and they like connect with each other, and they get the stuff that they really need. But I think that's been a tricky thing for us to navigate, like how to create compelling environments that leaders prioritize so that they get the connections that they need, you know.
For sure. Yeah. All right, I'm going to give you guys one more thing, and then I'll kind of talk through even just specifically what Greenhouse is doing and how we're doing that. Because I think we're kind of hitting on this idea and this concept. There are different ways to gather. There are different ways to connect with leaders. And I think that all of these are really important. And I think that they really are places and spaces that we need to have more than just one of these different ones. And so for us, we kind of see it as two tensions of organized versus organic, which is what Josh and Lucas were talking about, and then individual and communal spaces. Because when it comes to caring for and developing leaders, how we connect, to Lucas's point, how we connect is just as important as how often we connect. Again, the four types that we look at, I'm not saying that this is gospel, but for us, this is just kind of the matrix that we look at is, again, organized, organic, individual, communal, and we work these together to keep our leaders healthy, encouraged, and equipped. So the organized connections exactly what it is. Schedule touch points. These are things like monthly coaching calls, leadership gatherings, planned trainings. These give the leaders the stability and the rhythm that they can count on. You've got your type A people who are like, I want to come get trained. I want to come do that. Those are the ones that you're like, thank you for actually showing up to the space that we've provided, to Lucas's point. But not everybody wants that. But this is where we can make sure nothing slips through the cracks. Like vision is reinforced. Everyone stays aligned on the mission of making disciples. But if we just have organized connections, we risk becoming too mechanical, to Josh's point a little earlier, which is where organic connections have to come in, right? These could be something as simple as a text, just drop-ins, coffee chats, the quick like, hey man, talked about this last week. I'm praying for you. How did that go at your microchurch? I heard somebody got, in the hospital. Like, hey, is there anything we can do? Just reminding those leaders, they're loved as people, right? They're not just ministry producers. They're not just cogs in the wheel. They're not alone when ministry or life gets messy. But we also need individual connections. These are those one-on-one moments where leaders can share honestly about their struggles or their victories or questions that they're not going to do in a room of 100 or a room even of 4 people. They want to have that conversation with just you. And in these conversations, leaders can be pastored, they can be prayed for, challenged in ways that are deeply personal. Individual connections allow for real accountability and soul care. But again, like we want to have those communal connections. That was one of the big misses for us, like in Greenhouse. Like, and I'll talk a little bit about if I could go back and do it different. As we've gotten a little bit larger, like there are some people like, I don't even know who the microchurch leaders in our church are. Like microchurch leaders are saying this about other microchurch leaders, and that's just such a miss on our part. And this is why I think we need those times when leaders can gather with others that are in the trench with them. Like these moments are powerful because this is where we create shared language and mutual encouragement, the sense that we're belonging to something bigger than just our own specific microchurch. And when leaders see and hear from one another, like faith is multiplied, best practices are shared, momentum builds. And when you put all 4 of those together, you get healthy, holistic rhythms that shepherd your leaders. They inspire them in vision, they train them with practical skills, and they equip them with the tools that they need. But each type of this connection fills a different need. And together we can create an environment where leaders thrive, they multiply, they stay in the game for the long haul. So even before we kind of get into the grid, I would love to, I think we have a small enough crew here where we can kind of just chat through briefly, like, hey, what does your structure look like right now when it comes to connecting and coaching and training your leaders? Like, I would love to just get like a 2-minute maybe from each person on the call, just because I definitely don't have the monopoly on the perfect structure. So I'd love to glean from you guys too and hear what you're doing, what's going well, and maybe just a sticking point. So yeah, everybody, we can kind of just go around, but I'd love to hear like a 1 or 2 minute, hey, this is how we structure our network.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'm Bree with the Kansas City Underground, and we're structured that we have multiple hubs in our city. And so each of our hubs structures their coaching a little differently in the ways that can contextualize to their part of the city or their people group. But coaching is non-negotiable. That's the one thing we're like, set up your hub how you will. But you have to have the coaching for all of the things, all the points you just said, Matt. For the hub that I'm connected with, we have monthly coaching groups, is what we call them. Some are in person, some are online, virtual, whatever works for those folks. And yeah, we hit on the things that were in your slides. And so this is encouraging to me to hear that people are doing like-minded things around the country. Also, we have not only the coaching groups, but we have what we call equipping gatherings. So we bring all the people from that hub together. And those topics really come from the coaching groups. So as we are sitting in coaching groups and we're hearing a theme of, whoa, everybody is super burned out or tired or weary, we're like, let's talk about Sabbath or whatever that topic may be. So the coaching groups we have found are really feeding the material or content for our equipping gatherings and our trainings and things like that. Yeah.
That's great. Craig, how about you, man? What's your coaching structure look like?
Well, we're kind of on this just out of curiosity. We really are looking towards a network, but we don't have a network yet. We have maybe, you know, 2 entities that we hope will become more, and but we've been very close as leaders within the context that we have. And so we haven't had a problem with staying connected. And one of the fears of our leaders is that we're no longer going to be a single unit moving towards the same thing in the same place. And so we want to maintain our connectedness, our sense of family, and so was really interested in just joining this and to hear about how other people were doing it in other places. So
Great. Well, hey, great to have you, Craig. That's awesome. That's super encouraging, man.
Yeah, and I'll just really briefly, I'll just touch on a thing that Craig just said. Like there's an enormous amount of emerging simple church networks, whatever you want to call them, microchurch, house church, or whatever, that we, in our language, they would be in phase 1, which is like 1 or 2 house churches or communities that are a bit bloated, and they're trying to figure out, we have it in our DNA to multiply, and we have a bunch of emerging leaders, and we think this could easily be 5, 6, 8, 10 microchurches, but it like stagnates. It sits there as like 1 or 2 big bloated house churches or something. And I think the thing that often keeps them from getting from phase 1 of movement to phase 2 of movement is people not wanting to get distant relationally, which is this question, right? It's like we've gotten so close to each other in community and we don't want to have any relational distance. And I think Matt's point of like imagining ways to keep leaders connected is actually a way that you can help people get over the psychological discomfort of launching and leading, because you realize you're not losing each other forever. You're actually going to be in other environments in a different way. So just as like a brief encouragement to Craig, like I'm so glad he's here, and this exact conversation can actually help people get from phase 1 to phase 2 of movement. I won't share too much about Tampa Underground. I think Bree, a lot of what she shared is similar to us. We in Tampa, we are a collection of what we call area collectives, which in their terms would be hub. So we're a regional network of 6 different area collectives, and those area collectives are networks of microchurches, but the area team feels a sense of responsibility to coach, convene, and train the microchurches in their area, which means that depending on what area of the city you're in, you might have a different frequency of convening with other microchurch leaders, depending on what that area team decides. So there are some areas that convene the microchurch leaders monthly, some do quarterly, some do weekly, some convene the microchurch leaders weekly. But I think the aim there is for those gatherings of the microchurch leaders to feel organic in a home, maybe not called something, not called a program, not branded or something like that. They're supposed to feel a little bit more organic. And then the whole regional network gets together about 6 times a year for larger organized events that are usually around inspiration, coaching, some of those core features that Matt brought up. So we have sort of 6 annual rotating events that happen every year that the network looks forward to. That would be most of it.
Yeah, that's great. How about one more? Does anybody else want to share?
Good afternoon. I hope I don't say anything crazy. I am Chandra Stringer from West Palm Beach, Florida. I had no idea what a microchurch was. I didn't even know a microchurch existed. June of this past year, which I often do, I was in Orlando. I take time away from my schedule. I'm an entrepreneur by trade, a business consultant. And I was laying in bed and the Lord said, microchurch. And I'm like, what in the world is that? So went on Google. I'm like, what is a microchurch? And literally found out there's a whole nother world. And so I am here. I've already registered for the conference in March, and I'm just wanting to find out more about it. Grew up Baptist, been Pentecostal all my life. And for the last 3 years, I basically have done church online through various pastors, but never felt led to connect or become a member, but still make sure I get fed. But the accountability, the covering, and all of those things, those were important to me. And so I'm here just like a new babe in Christ to find out more information and to find out, is this something that God is really leading me to do? As I was researching, I came up with a name, the mission, and all that stuff, but I still don't know what all that equates to over time. Thank you.
Okay, Shannon, glad you're here. Man, I love that you're a Baptist Pentecostal. I bet you're fun to hang out with, girl. That's quite a combination. So no, I love that you're here. Thanks for coming and sharing. And hopefully this will be a little bit of help of a catalyst for stuff that you're doing too. All right, so let me just share a little bit of kind of what this looks like. If we're looking kind of at these are kind of the quadrants we look at when it comes to these 4 types of connection. And again, I just want to reiterate, there's no one way to do this. There's not a silver bullet that's going to solve all your issues. The Florida crew that I'm working with is going to be very different than somebody who's in, the Pacific Northwest or Canada or the Philippines or South Africa. Like, I'm hopefully going to give you some principles. Like, I don't think that there are formulaic ways to pull this off, but I do think there are principles. And so kind of this idea of organized, organic, individual, communal, and then kind of looking at that intentionally and strategically and figuring out what the needs of your network are is pretty key. So I think, like Craig's group is going to be different than Bree's group because they're just in different seasons and in different phases, which is different than Josh, whose church plant that's already starting to blossom there. So again, I'll give a little bit of our strategy, but there's, again, not just one way to do this. So I think the first thing is just looking at the organized communal pieces. These are going to be the things that we've been talking about, these weekly, monthly, or quarterly gatherings. This for us is where we see a lot of those 4 things that I talked about earlier: shepherding, inspiration, equipment, training. We do something similar to Bree. We kind of put our ear to the ground and say, okay, what are the needs of our people right now? Sometimes people just feel burnt out. So we do talk about, hey, we're just gonna love on you. We're gonna share with you. We're gonna shepherd with you. We're just gonna give you a great meal and let you just hang out and just be with other leaders. Other times it's very intentional, training and equipping, especially for us. We're in a college town, so August, September is always equipping training with a little bit of inspiration because that's the beginning, functionally the beginning of our year. So it really just depends on the season and the quarter of what we're going over. But that's even different from age. So again, we're in a college town, so we've probably got 17 different college microchurches led by college students, 18 to 21-year-olds. We make them meet every week, non-negotiable. Like, you have to come to our Monday night microchurch meeting for our leaders. That helps keep them connected. It keeps them aligned. If somebody's, a young adult to older 70s, 80s that are still leading microchurches, they come to the quarterly stuff. But we want to make sure that we've got that communal organized gathering. I think that it's helpful to have some type of gathering like this. If I could go back and start over, even when we were a lot smaller, that's one thing. I would have loved to do a monthly gathering, kind of like what Bree was saying. I think that's very helpful. We have always done quarterly. I'll talk about what we're doing now, but I think that's a really important piece to this puzzle. Something that we're trying out, this is part of our new structure that I said we rolled out last month. We're doing something called triads. So we're piloting this. And what a triad is it's 3 microchurch leaders who meet together regularly, usually once a month or every other month, with the simple goal of just encouraging each other, sharpening each other's leadership, stay spiritually healthy in the midst and the demands of ministry. We picked 3 because it provides enough diversity of perspective to keep things fresh, but enough intimacy of size to keep things real. In other words, you can't hide in a triad, but you also don't get lost in a shuffle. We feel like it's a sweet spot of accountability and encouragement. So the purpose of the triads is not to add another meeting to a leader's calendar. God knows we already have enough meetings of stuff. And like Lucas said, if we call it a meeting, then people just aren't going to come. They won't have time for it. The purpose, though, of this is to create a rhythm of connection that keeps leaders from running on fumes, being with other leaders that they already connect with. So we let them choose, of the microchurch leaders in our movement, 2 other groups that they want to hang out with, that they would probably hang out with anyways, and to have some relational buy-in. And that way they have leaders who get it. Your friends may love you. They don't understand what it feels like to have a house full of people who all show up in different levels of spiritual maturity. They don't know what it means to carry the weight of discipling others, judging those with the responsibilities of your own life and family. They don't know, like my kids, they're like, Daddy, my favorite Barbie got's head pulled off on Tuesday night. And I'm like, maybe, you know, like even stuff like that, like anecdotal things like that with your kids. Like, hey, how do you raise kids knowing that their stuff's going to get trashed when microchurch kids come around? You know, I mean, that's the kind of, that's like the real life stuff that people just don't understand. But the triads, hopefully for us, we're hoping that they form like that spiritual and missional anchor, keeps you steady when ministry gets heavy. It's not just on your own shoulders. Again, we're trying to make that more relational and organic so that they've got those people they can call. And it's not just this faceless network that they're a part of. It's like, oh no, these are my people. These are the guys, these are the ladies I'm in the trenches with, and I can relate to. It's kind of hard as a microchurch leader. You know, you can't have your microchurch pray for having struggles in your microchurch. Hey, microchurch, pray for me because microchurch is pretty heavy right now. You know, I mean, that's just a weird, you can't use that as the spot to share. You need other leaders to help you with that. So one of the things we're trying to do is get that communal, organic piece happening there with camaraderie and inspiration and shepherding. The other part of what we're trying to do is office hours. And so, you know, I piloted this with our college students where I just say, hey, every 8 weeks, you're required to sign up for an office hours with me or one of the other leaders on the microchurch team. And it's basically just like a 45-minute to an hour where we just get down to the nuts and bolts of, hey, how's your microchurch going? We look at some specific metrics of like, hey, how are you doing personally? What problems are you having? What are we celebrating in your microchurch? What's your apprenticeship look like? What does multiplication look like? How can I pray for you? So that we have kind of like 6 points that we go over. And just to make sure that they're feeling like they have a spot where they can talk shop with one of our more mature and successful microchurch leaders that can kind of speak from experience. So I had, you know, even just yesterday, I met with probably 4 different leaders who are in totally different spaces and really just kind of being the coach for them in those spaces that they had specifically and those issues that they're having specifically. So trying to hit that as well. Another thing that we started with, so a lot of what we did when we were probably like 15 to anywhere from like, I would say this would work from anywhere from 2 to 40 microchurches, is we really just doubled down on the one-on-ones. And again, I just kind of shared those 6 points. It's stupid alliteration, but it works, man. People remember them. So these are the 6 things that we go over. And we would just always have those times. So we paired this with quarterly gatherings, and that scaled really well for us until we had about 50, 60 different microchurches. We were able to cover everybody with the one-on-ones and with like a quarterly gathering. David, you got a question?
Yeah, man. I'm just curious, and then I'm gonna have to go to pick up my kids a little bit early, so excuse me. But I really wanted to ask you this. As you are rolling stuff out like this, the triads and the office hours and things, so you're obviously picking best practices and trying to roll them out like to a whole network. But the whole like ethos of microchurch is to kind of let people do whatever God is telling them to do. So like, can you describe the process of rolling stuff out and saying like, hey, this is going to be mandatory now, or whatever level of mandatoriness you want, and how that goes with people? As you know, is this a suggestion? Do you mandate it? Like, how does that work as you're rolling out some of these best practices across the network?
Yeah, so for this is a lot of just on the coaching side. So microchurch proper, what they do like on a Tuesday night or a Friday morning or whenever their microchurch meets, that's still 100% in their domain. So we're very much like a sister DNA with Underground. So Brian Sanders and Mike Patz have been best friends since they were little kids. It's really interesting because the DNA of Underground got planted as its own separate entity outside of a church. I think that same DNA got planted into a very traditional AG church, and then it kind of blossomed there. So we are very much part of that, like, hey, the ecclesial minimum of worship, mission, and community. So microchurch leaders, they lead kind of as long as those 3 expressions are there and they're making disciples and moving towards multiplication, you can do it however the heck you want. So we don't really micromanage that at all. So this kind of stuff is more of the organizational coaching piece. And so I mean, like there are leaders who have been leading for like 15 years. And like I talked to one of him, he's one of the elders at our church. He's like, hey man, I don't think I can, I don't think I can do that. Like I mean, I meet with people And I just grandfather them in. I'm like, hey man, that's fine, you know, because I trust them and he's got a decade plus of experience where I'm like, I don't need Chris checking in with me every month. I know he's going to call me if he's got issues. We have rapport, things like that. So anybody who's kind of new into the system, it is mandatory. Those who have been with us for years and years and years, and are just kind of running almost on autopilot at some level, I let them be a little more laxed. But in terms of triads, in terms of like office hours, that is something that I am saying, hey guys, this is a mandatory thing. And we really cast vision behind that, David. I'm like, hey guys, this is not for us. This is for you. Like, healthy leaders connect with other leaders. And otherwise, you're just going to burn bright for maybe a year or two, and then you're going to burn out. So being part of our network, we're going to mandate that you have healthy rhythms. So I think we I break that down much kinder than I did just here with you, but we really make sure that they see the value add of these types of added things. A lot of times we're not adding, so even like with the triads and the office hours, we're not adding anything they weren't already doing. In sense of like they were meeting, like our structure before this was, hey, you meet monthly with a microchurch coach on a one-on-one basis, and you go to the quarterly trainings. So we kind of said, hey guys, we're actually not adding anything to your schedule. We're kind of diversifying the structure. So the triads, it could be it's once every 8 weeks. The office hours is once every 8 weeks. So we're like, hey, it's still a once a month meeting that we're requiring of you. But we just think that this is going to be actually meeting the felt needs that you've brought up to us. So I think a lot of times when you're adding new stuff like this, we're not just doing that without having like a pretty good groundswell from the actual leaders themselves. Like, hey, we heard that so much in the last couple of years as we've gotten a little bit bigger. Like, hey, I don't even know who the microchurch leaders are. I was like, okay, that's a problem. And so triads is a way to solve that problem. Office hours is a way to keep connected even as we grow. So for us, it's not, hey, thus saith the Lord, just do it because your father said so. This is more so, hey, we've heard from you and we're going to kind of bring this to the table. So kind of like what Bree said, you hear these kind of consistent cadences across these different networks. We're doing what we hear the leaders need. And like any good parent, like, my kids, I'm like, hey, no, you can't just go run around in the street. Like that's just not healthy for you. Like we want to protect you and help you, but it's also something that we're hearing from them. So we're trying to respond to needs versus just dictating things from the top down from the ivory tower.
Right. I also think having led in a similar context to Matt, I also think that this is just one of the primary like size and scale really affect just like the culture of things and what you have to do. And I think some of the ultra distributive stuff, like things do break down both qualitatively and organizationally at a certain level of scale. And so I think like in a situation like, 'cause I mean, Matt, how many micro churches do you say you guys have?
207 at this point.
Yeah, like I think at some point like that, your centralizing features have to be a bit stronger if you intend to stay like one larger church, which you guys are.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there's other models or maybe even the same model, but at a lower level of scale where you would not necessarily need you wouldn't necessarily need that same level of accountability or maybe formal kind of or like formal or like required rhythms.
Yeah. And it is like to like a Craig's point, we were way more fluid because we could be when we had, 10 to 20 leaders in our movement.
Right.
Because we could. It was just we could still dial in on the organic and it's still a sustainable model. But once you get to a point and you can't scale it anymore, there has to be, and that is like what Lucas said in the chat, that is the tricky tension of really trying to empower ethos, but also have like a cultural plumb line and a DNA that you're like, hey guys, this is because that's just going to like it's just gonna dissipate as you get farther out. So we're trying to have enough places that kind of snap them back culturally that allows them to feel like they're still able to kind of do what God's calling them to do without feeling too heavy-handed. But there is a nuance to that is an art as much as it is a science. That's a great question, though. So this is kind of what it looks like for us right now. And again, I'm not saying this is the best. This is just how we're trying to structure our network based on size. Like I said, in the beginning, we could do one-on-ones and a quarterly gathering, and that was it. Like we were very strong. We could keep our culture, our ethos, we could keep our DNA very tight. We allowed for radical freedom for our leaders to try new things and move into very risky spaces, to be on the cutting edge of things. As we've grown and scaled, this is the way that we're trying to actually, ironically, with more things happening, we're trying to keep it that same startup type of mentality where it's like, all right, Lord, anything you want to do. But the quarterly gatherings allow us to have that organized communal space where we just want to say something and we need everybody to hear it. Even just this last, like the rollout when we were talking about, hey, here's the Wyoming triads and office hours. We did that and I recorded it so I could send it out because I knew everybody couldn't make it. So it is super impersonal, but at some level, I'm like, I need everybody to hear this. So the quarterly gatherings is kind of like, hey, we need everybody to hear it. Triads is more of that relational connection to where it feels like, all right, we tell people, hey, triads, like have meals in your homes. Like don't make this some like, don't meet at the church for this. Don't meet somewhere that's like, let this be your organic piece. But then the office hours allow us to make sure that it's not just all, hey, how are you doing? Like, no, how's your microchurch doing? How are your people doing? What are the issues that we need to be talking through? And between those three spaces, like we will add the like one-on-ones if I do hear something, if I'm talking about somebody's microchurch in an office hour, and we're talking, shop, but I'm also sensing like from the spirit, hey man, this guy needs a little bit more conversation about just some personal things, then I'll be like, hey, why don't we meet up again and let's just grab some coffee and kind of talk through things. So amongst these three spaces, it's enough for us to keep enough of from a organizational standpoint, an ecclesial standpoint, enough to say, okay, the DNA is in alignment, people are doing well, the vision is staying clear, but the triads and then like the one-on-ones when we need it allows us to have that relational piece as well, where we're able to say like, hey man, how are you doing? Like, I just want to know I care about you as a disciple, you as a brother, you as a sister, versus just somebody who's producing for the network. So for us, this is how we're doing it. Like I said, this is not the only way, but I think looking at this with the spaces of organized, organic, communal, individual will really help you see things in a way that allow you to make sure that your people are getting what they need. It's also good to kind of check with your folks and be like, hey, where do you think the coaching structure is right now? Because from your vantage point, you might think, oh yeah, we're super organic, we're doing great. And they're like, man, it just feels like we go to meeting after meeting after meeting, So I would also just encourage you to talk to your people and see what it is from the ground up. I know I only have a few more minutes, so any questions, any pushbacks, comments, questions that you guys have about anything that we were talking through?
It was super interesting. I sent out a little end of the year survey, last year or whatever, and just asked that question. How are you feeling supported, or are you feeling supported? And the overwhelming response was, we don't care what we do when we get together. We just need to get together.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, well, that's beautiful. So it really hammers home everything you've said, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, Bree.
I'm curious for many of the others, Matt, Josh, Bree, Doug. Like, are there environments that you, in the past, like, the last 2 or 3 years of experience, are there types of environments that you've created for microchurch leaders that they're like always there, always want it, always excited, versus types of environments that you think, I think you really need this, but it's always feels like a slog to get them there?
I think a lot of times this is cultural.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the folks that I'm currently coaching are coming from a background where they like really love content. Like they want like they want to be like challenged with like new ideas and reminded of principles and things like that. And so I find I actually would like to do more of the unstructured, like
Mm-hmm.
open floor type thing. And the people in my network, like if I come up with like a really like a good workshop title that's relevant to their ministry, they will show up for that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do an open doors thing, I have to convince people a bit more that like, hey, this will be worth your time, you know.
Yeah.
So
For us, it's been more age based. So a lot of our college leaders, our Gen Z leaders, they want the organic. They want to just be seen. They want to just connect.
Mm-hmm.
As that, it's directly proportional to age. Like the older that our leaders are, the more they're wanting. Hey, kind of that organized content. Like, hey, help me get this right. So it's been interesting. I haven't had that much of a dichotomy, except in the last probably 2 years. I've just seen that kind of really kind of draw their party lines, if you will, from like Gen Z to Gen X and Boomers. Like they are wanting very different things. So
Mm-hmm.
we tried to structure a little bit to accommodate that. So like with our weekly cadence of our college leaders, they absolutely love that. I don't think anybody over 25 would want to meet weekly. So it is just kind of interesting for us. It's an age issue of
Yeah.
how they want to meet and what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. We've had to even in our own like database, we've had to start keeping track of leaders that have been leading microchurches more than 7 years versus leaders that have been leading microchurches less than 7 years, because those two populations actually like need very different things from the leadership environments. Um, and and you almost can't design an environment where both those populations win, quote unquote, or get what they need. So you sort of have to like design for the newbies and include the OGs as contributors, not recipients of the environment, to get them there, or else like it sort of misses them. Um, or if so that's been you mentioning the age thing made me think about that. For us, it's like sometimes it's age, but sometimes it's just like longevity and leadership. It like the people earlier in their leadership, they're like so stoked about the training and the content and the ideas. And the people that have been at it for 7 years are like, if you show me the ecclesial minimum diagram one more time, I'm gonna punch you. They're like, I don't need this anymore. Like they need something else. Those are the people that show up for like worship and prayer night,
Mhm.
and they just want to like sit in the prayer room together, you know. Um, so yeah, it's been a thing that we've been wondering about, and other networks' experience of it. So
Lucas, this is interesting. One thing that I found in previously is that there's the people who've been leading under 7 years. There's the people who've been leading more than 7 years, but then there's the
Mhm.
people who've been leading like more than 15 years. And sometimes those people actually do need like help, like going back to like the original
Yes,
core training and being reminded
correct.
and
Yeah,
energized by it. So it's funny.
yeah,
It's almost like some of that baseline training and like that those core values do, I think they do take on like renewed relevance in later stages of leadership for whatever reason.
yeah, yep, yep. Yeah, the only other thing, Bree probably knows this better than most of it. I mean, if she's experiencing it, but we've just learned over time that if you call it coaching, nobody asks for it.
Right.
Like almost no one self-diagnoses that they need coaching. So if you set it up and say, "Hey, we're here to coach you, come and ask," no one will come. It will be the most underutilized thing in your whole network, but actually everyone needs it, which is why I think it's great that she said like that's the one you don't get to choose. It's sort of forced upon you, you know. But like if you tell a leader like, "Can we just grab lunch on Tuesday or something?" and you sit down and you talk to them about their ministry, and this thing called coaching happens, whether or not it's like disclosed to anyone that it happened, and they come out of that meeting, they're like, "That was so helpful. Bree's super helpful. Like, I'm so glad I had that meeting." Like coaching suddenly happened, so there is a way, I think Alan Hirsch always calls this organic systems. There's ways in which like you want organic things to happen. Like you want coaching has to sort of happen organically, and relational connections between microchurch leaders have to happen organically. But you can't, as network leaders, you can't like sit back and hope that it happens organically. You actually have to design for the organic to happen. You have to like have, you have to sort of like have, you have to have administrative systems
Right. Right.
that are aimed toward intentional organic life, which is super hard to do. So you know, and Matt, I think you've been living in that world for a long time too.
Yeah, for sure.
Josh, final thoughts?
My computer's about to die and I can't find my cord.
So very, very urgent final thoughts.
Yeah. So, no, not really. Thank you so much to everybody who showed up on this call. I guess, I mean, thank you so much to Matt, I guess, you know, just for putting together this thing, and we'll make sure it gets out to people who registered but weren't able to make the call. As far as the Microchurch Conference goes, you know, we're doing one of these sessions, one of these digital advanced sessions every month. We'd love to see just more people engage these sessions. And so please help us with promoting these. You know, we've got links for these that Lucas can send out. But in addition to that, Microchurch registration is in full swing, and we're pretty excited. We're hoping to see a good turnout to Tampa. We'll have more and more information coming out about, you know, what networks will be there, the structure of the sessions, but it's really built every time we've done it, and we're very confident that what's going to be there this time is going to be an even more vital gathering of practitioners with just a ton of energy and insight. And so please, like, help us turn out people in your network there.